Hey everyone, this is a really weird video for me to make. This is my 5th time filming it. Every time I film it, it just doesn't feel right, and then I go and re-film it again, and I'm hoping this is going to be the last time. But I put up a community post a couple of days ago and I asked whether any of you would be interested in hearing about my cancer journey, and I had a massive amount of you writing saying that you did, and you were all so kind. I love this community, and I really hope that to all of you who are here, you like it too. I like the friendliness of everyone. Everyone supports each other. I see it in the comments, the way you respond to each other. It's just lovely, and thank you for all the kindness. I want to start by saying that I'm cancer free, and I've been cancer free for years now. But when you have had cancer, for any of you who are unfortunate enough to have had it, to have it right now, or to be supporting a friend or a partner or a family member or a work colleague who has got it, you will know that you have to go for checkups for years after, just to make sure it hasn't come back. And I don't want this video to be doom and gloom. I don't want you to go away from this video feeling horrible. You know, with the videos I make, I want them to have like a positive ending. And really, this video is for any of you going through this or supporting someone going through it, or even if you've just been through it and you're interested in hearing. Or even if you're fortunate to never have had it at all and you just want to know, this is my story. So I was actually born with cancer. I was born with a rare type of cancer, and I've had to write down the name because it's a really long name and I can never remember it. It's called a dermatofibrosarcoma. I was going to put a picture in this video of it, but when I Google imaged it, well, I already knew, but it's really gross. It's really not pretty to look at, and I didn't want to trigger anyone or make anyone feel grossed out. So if you want to go and Google image it, then I will put the name of the particular type of cancer below. But it's basically tumorous cancer. So I was lucky in that whilst I had quite a few operations, I never had to have radiotherapy or chemotherapy, which I'm massively grateful for. I mean, to anyone who goes through that, you've got so much strength to go through that. It was bad enough, but that would have just been an extra layer on top of it all. So I was born with that particular type of cancer, which is a tumorous cancer, and I was born with multiple tumours all clustered around my lower back, my spine. And when I was born, my parents told me that they noticed on my back that I had what looked like bruises about the size of a thumb mark, and I had quite a cluster of bruises. And they spoke to the doctor, and the doctor at the time when I was born just said, it's birthmark, don't worry about it. It actually took 7 years for me to get diagnosed, and I was diagnosed because of an accident. And my parents were fairly young parents, and the doctors always fobbed them off pretty much with, there's nothing wrong, go away, it's just a birthmark. So from the age of 0 through to 7, I was backwards and forwards to the doctor, because as I was growing, these marks were growing with me. Not only were they getting bigger, but they were starting to protrude, and they were like bubbling through the skin. And my dad always said to me, he was like, when you looked at your back, you could see that the bruised colour was from something underneath the skin. It wasn't the skin itself. You could see the skin was getting thinner, and the colour of the tumour underneath is what you were seeing. And my dad always said to me, he's like, you know, as a parent, you know when something's wrong. And he said from the day that I was born, him and my mum just knew, and they were not taken seriously, and they found it so frustrating. So the way that I eventually got diagnosed is that, I think I've spoken about this before. When I was growing up, we used to be back and forward to Qatar from time to time, and my grandparents lived out there, and we'd gone out there for one particular trip. And I'd gone into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I tried to reach to get my toothbrush, couldn't reach it, so I climbed up onto the sink, grabbed the toothbrush, turned around and like slid down, and as I slid down, the 90-degree angle of the marble grated against all of these tumours that were in my back. I actually will never forget how much that hurt. I do remember the pain. Normally you don't remember pain, you know it hurt, but you can't remember specific. I remember specific how it hurt. I couldn't stop being sick because the pain was so bad. My my grandparents took me downstairs and put me on the sofa face down. My mum was on the phone to the airline trying to get a flight ticket back to the UK as quickly as possible. My grandmother had a bag of peas on my back. I remember at one point, and I don't know why, maybe because of the noise I was making, but the neighbour turned up. And then when the neighbours saw what had happened, they went away and they came back again, and it was Easter at the time, and they had all Easter eggs for us and like toys and stuff to try and cheer us up. But obviously, you know, I've just scraped a bunch of tumours, so I'm in kind of a lot of pain, so there was not much cheering up to be had. But we went back to the UK the next day. That was as soon as my parents could get a flight out. Went straight to the GP. The GP, this is where it's really not even frustrating, it's kind of angering. The GP saw, so my mum said, by this point, all of these lumps are really angry now, they're really sticking out, they're really raised, the area's red, it's very sore, very tender. And the doctor on this occasion couldn't tell my mum, yet again, that it was a birthmark, because both birthmarks don't stick out from the skin, generally speaking. They're more of like a stain on the skin, or, you know, if you've got a birthmark and it's different, let me know, but that's my understanding of it. And he said to my mum, okay, I'll refer you to a surgeon, but I'm going to refer you to a cosmetic surgeon, because he still at that point didn't think there was anything wrong. He thought it was a cosmetic issue at this point. And my mum was just like, why are we seeing a cosmetic surgeon? We should be seeing someone who specialises in tumours or cancers or skin conditions or whatever it was. But that was as good as we were going to get. It was either you see the cosmetic surgeon or you don't see anyone at all. So my mum takes me along to this surgeon. He was lovely. I remember him. I remember his name. He was the nicest man. And I had the first operation. I come back round from the operation. Turns out I'd been asleep for 3 days because there were so many tumours. When he got in there were so many tumours that he was unable to close up the scar after I'd had the operation. He had to leave the scar open. It grosses me out. He had to leave the scar open and leave drains going into my back for 3 days in order to do whatever it took. I don't know why they did that, but my mum said it was really shocking, and that like the scar on my back, just to kind of put it into perspective, I look like I've been bitten by a shark on my back. The scar is literally this big. It's massive, and because they've taken out so much muscle, which I'm going to come on to, it goes in. So it's huge. I look like I look like I've been bitten by a shark on this particular side. It's a really shocking scar. It's a scar that I struggled with and I hated for years, because particularly when I hit teenagehood, I couldn't wear bikinis, I couldn't wear shorter tops, I couldn't wear low back dresses. And so particularly when I hit teenager, I hated the scar, and I'm going to come on to that in 1 second. But so I've had the first operation. My parents get a call from the surgeon who tells them that actually it's cancer. Can you believe how my parents must have felt? I mean, thank God I was a child. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't have comprehended what cancer was. I couldn't have comprehended how serious it was. But I was in my room one day after school, and school was difficult during this period of my life. I missed a whole year of school, and I had to be homeschooled because I was having different operations and having loads of checks done to make sure whether it had come back or not. And the amount that they'd had to remove in operations was so much that my mum said that I was quite a frail child for quite a long time and couldn't really go and play, and obviously was missing a load of muscle, etc. So I'm in my room one evening, and my mum comes in, and I knew something was up because she had loads of gifts from members of the family, and I've always been really into cars, and there were toy cars, remote control cars, and all of these really cool gifts, and I was playing with them, and I remember thinking, this is shady, what's going on? Pete, you don't just get given gifts like this in the middle of the year. And I said to I was like, well, who are they from? And she's like, well, your grandma and, you know, various members of the family. And then she said, and I will remember it, she sat me on my bed and said, you've got to go for another operation. And my heart sank because that first operation was brutal. Also, when you're a kid, other kids don't understand what cancer is, or what they don't understand the gravitas of it. All they know is you're the child that hasn't been in school for a year. So when you go back, you're on the outside. Your friends don't. Your friends that were your friends are not really your friends anymore because they've had a whole year without you, and it really can affect your friendship group and how you are at school and your learning. It really affected all of it. But I go back in for a second operation, and the second operation is a lot more intense. Turns out that the cosmetic surgeon, when he'd been told it was cancer, he'd been told the type of cancer, and at the time there was one professor in Australia who specialised in this type of cancer because it's a very rare cancer, and the surgeon was having to liaise remotely with this professor in Australia, and the professor was advising him on what to do in order to make sure the cancer ideally didn't come back. And he said to the surgeon, you've got to go in there and you've got to take out every bit of tissue, everything that tumour touched has to go, or the tumours will come back. So the second operation was huge. I had a skin graft. I couldn't stand, but I couldn't sit. I struggled to do anything. The pain was incredible. I remember my parents being really distressed, which made me distressed, and I know they tried to hide it, but I understand it, to see your child go through that, and I know a lot of you watching, and I hate to think of it, will be going through something similar right now. And just know that I understand, and I send you and your family so much healing, because cancer is like the worst thing possible. Fast forward to when I was 15. My mum took me to one side and said to me, you had cancer. And from the age of 7, so for 5 solid years, you have regular cancer checkups where they make sure it hasn't come back again. So I had the medical checkups until 12, and they were frequent, and then I still have them now, but they're not so frequent. They're like once a year. So my mum told me at age 15 that I'd had cancer, but she didn't want to tell me any later because it's the kind of thing that you want to know. You know, I wouldn't have wanted to have hit 20 for her to have told me. 15 felt like the right age. Fast forward again. So you know, I told you I've got this scar. I hated it. Everything about it. Couldn't look at it, couldn't touch it, couldn't think about it. Everything about it I couldn't stand. Well, there's a hospital in the UK called the Royal Marsden, and it's a cancer hospital. And I went to see my GP, a new GP, not the original one, and said, look, is there anything we can do for this scar, because it is bothering me? And he said, well, actually, the Royal Marsden have come up with some new solutions for survivors of cancer who have scars, so I'll refer you there. So I go along to this appointment, see this really lovely surgeon, and he looked at the scar and he said, yep, you're a perfect candidate for what we now do, which is that we take the good skin that's above the scar, we put a balloon under that skin, and we slowly, over the course of weeks, inflate that balloon, stretch that skin out, and then when there's enough skin, it makes me cringe, they cut out the old scar, they pull down that new skin over the top of the scar, and then they stitch it closed, so that instead of having a huge skin graft scar, which is what I've got, it would be like a little line with stitch marks through it. And I just thought that would be perfect for me. I agreed to it. I didn't think about any of the practicalities of having a balloon on my back for weeks. All I could focus on was, I hate the scar, I want it gone. So that was that. Before you could have the operation, you had to have up to 3 appointments where they went through the procedure with you, all of the risks, and they did that to make doubly sure that you really understood what you were letting yourself in for. On the second appointment, I had met David, my husband, and we had been going out for not more than 2 weeks. But I really trusted him. At that point, I told him about my cancer and about my back and all of that kind of thing. And I said to him, would you come to this appointment with me at the Royal Marsden? He came along, and David, my husband, he's so sweet. He's quite quiet, and he just sits back and observes, and then he kind of like shares his thoughts on it. But he was in the room, and he heard what the surgeon had to say to me about the operation and what was involved. And it was quite in a way, it was quite weird for me to have had someone in the room like David who I'd not known for long. But from the moment I met David, it felt like I'd known him a million years. It was a very weird feeling, but we felt like we knew each other. So it didn't, although it was weird to have someone new that was in my life, it didn't feel like anything personal that I didn't want him to hear. Anyway, we get in the car to go home. For the second time, I've already said yes to the operation, and I've just got one appointment left where I have to say yes, and then I'm good to go. We're in the car going home, and David just said to me, he said it in the sweetest way, he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I was really taken aback, because I'd never asked myself that question. I knew the answer to that question was I don't want the scar anymore, but I hadn't thought about it much more than that, really. I hadn't thought about the practicalities. And he said to me, you know, how are you going to drive to work when you've got a balloon on your back? And, you know, you're young and you socialise. How are you going to go out in the evening with a balloon on your back? How are you going to sleep at night? How are you going to do anything with this balloon on your back? And then, of course, there's going to be the massive healing process that would have happened after it. And it made me think, why am I doing this? And I remember him saying to me, you know, that scar represents the fact that you survived. If you'd never been diagnosed, you wouldn't be here today. That's the fact of it. If I hadn't been diagnosed and they'd continued to leave it, 7 years I lived with cancer. That's a long time. You know, I'm so lucky that it didn't, you know, get even worse, get into my lymph system, get into my blood, or etc. And he really made me think about what it was that I was doing. And now, although I've made peace with my scar now, I wouldn't be without it, because it feels like me. I've lived with it now for so long that it feels like me. Sure, I can't wear bikinis. Like, I could, but I would choose not to. But it's not the biggest issue in the world, you know. I'm hardly going around in a bikini every day, you know. So I've just accepted it, and in a way I love it, because it's me, and it, as I say, it represents the fact that I got through it, and that was a period of my life that's now in the past, but I got through it. So I would say that, you know, as I said, I wanted to do this video for anyone who's going through all of this right now, whether it's yourself or someone you love. I want to give you some sort of hope that it can be a very long process, but people can get through it. You can get through it. And I know not everyone is as fortunate as that, but really, I didn't come out the other side of it. I wasn't given the full all clear until I was 12. So from 0 to 12, I was in that category of you've got it, and then it had been removed, but I could still get it again. And I still go for checkups now. I do them once a year, which is something that I think is fairly common that they do, just to make sure it doesn't come back again. And yeah, that's my cancer journey, and I hope that this video hasn't been depressing, because I didn't want it to be depressing. I want it to kind of offer some level of hope, and even if you're not going through it and you're fortunate enough to not know anyone going through it, I hope that just this story's been of interest. And I know this is probably going to be a long video, but I hope that you've watched this and you feel hopeful and you don't feel depressed. And just to reiterate, I don't have cancer anymore. I've been cancer free for years, thankfully. If you need any support or anything, I would definitely say to write in the comments. And for any of you watching, in the comments as well, if you like, will go down there and have a read and write back to people. But if you see anyone's comment and they're struggling, please can you just give a little time and also write back to people, because it really is a help massively to others. So, and everyone here is so nice, and I know that you all already do write back to each other, and some of you it's weird, like Thelma and Jill and Rebecca, you know each other, but from the comments section it's really, really weird, and I love that. I love that community. So for any of you watching, if you could do that, I would appreciate it, and I know others would appreciate it. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.